Again, I ask tough questions about everything. In my research, I ask tough questions about how the universe works. Mm-hmm. That's the goal, is to understand something. That's what's cool about it. We're trying to answer questions nobody knows the answer to. Mm-hmm. And if you're investigating whether something is real or true or not, you better be able to ask tough questions. The worst thing that a person can say is just believe, just have faith. Don't ask those tough questions, because that's not a way to find truth.
Okay, something I think that perplexes many people is, so this God of creation, 2,000 years ago, decides to enter into his creation, to be born of a virgin, in the form of Jesus of Nazareth, a historical figure. And I can see, that is problematic for many people. It just seems strange. Can you describe that a little bit?
So what's problematic about it?
Well, so you have a God that created,
and
then enters into the creation. And it's hard, I guess, in the West or a Judeo-Christian environment or cultural upbringing, myself included, of how to even stop and ponder that, to how a non-Christian could look at that and go, that just seems really strange.
Yeah, so, again, you're talking... So when I give talks on how I think science points to God, I often get the question, why do you believe in the Christian God? Why not a different God? And when I answer that question, what does the Christian God mean? Well, it starts with the word Christ. It boils down to who was Jesus, right? So I'm a scientist. I want evidence for everything I believe. Why do I believe that Jesus was more than a man? It has to do with history. Did Jesus rise from the dead or not? Right? My dad died in 1993. I haven't seen him since. Amazingly so. Everybody I know who's died, nobody sees later, right? But according to the first followers of Jesus, he was alive. He was alive 3 days later, right? If that event happened, then Jesus is not just a man. He is more. And if that event happened, it should radically affect our lives. Now, historians can study whether events happen or not. Most historians say the resurrection didn't happen because there's a preconceived notion that you cannot show miracles happen, because they don't, right? But if you look at the evidence from the first century as to what happened that first Easter, which I've looked at from every angle, there's only one explanation that explains the facts. And the explanation is that this person, Jesus of Nazareth, came back from the dead. And if he came back from the dead, it validates his claims of who he was. How does God become a man? I have a clue. It's another thing about God I don't understand. But a true resurrection, and if you want to determine whether Christianity has any validity or not, you can look at all the scientific evidence for God. I think it's abundant. But you have to see whether Jesus rose from the dead. I can name a half dozen people off the top of my head who went to the historical evidence to prove that Jesus did not rise from the dead so they could wipe out Christianity once and for all, and became Christians because of that evidence. And so I don't have all the answers. God is much bigger than me. I don't know how God could become a man. I don't know how a virgin could have a child. I don't know how somebody could rise from the dead. But I can look at the evidence from history and see if it happened.
Well, it seems like this has changed your life and your belief in this. So with all the research, the evidence that points to the Creator you're describing in that, and if I was just curious to say, hey, okay, Mike, I don't believe in this Jesus you're talking about as the one who created the world, entered the creation, died and rose again in that. What would be the best way to convince me? Would it be to point to the science, or would there be something else you could say to me?
I don't know. Everybody's an individual. Everybody's different. What are your hang-ups with God? Were you hurt by the church? Do you just think it's a bunch of crock, right? Were you hurt by, a circumstance in life that you think a loving, caring God would never allow? I don't know everybody's circumstance, but I would say start with your biggest questions about God, right? If your biggest questions are intellectual, then look at the intellectual answers. Does the science point to God? Did Jesus historically rise from the dead? If your questions are emotional, how could a loving God allow this to happen? Then you need to wrestle with what God might be like and why a loving God might allow that to happen. If your questions are volitional, you just don't want to follow a God who might want you to live differently, then wrestle with why. I mean, everybody is different, and I don't know people's biggest questions. But I will tell you this. If the message of Christianity is true, if the followers of Jesus are correct in that Jesus is who he is, God who came to earth, he claimed to be the way, the truth, the life, the only way to God. If that's true, then he has the answers to those questions. He has the answers to your hurt and your pain and your willful disobedience and your intellectual questions. And if it's not true, don't follow it. It's ridiculous. And if it is true, the answers are there.